Can you give us an example of those considerations?
No.
2020 candidate Pete Buttigieg has shut the press out of his fundraising events and has also stopped releasing the names of his campaign bundlers. Now, before I go any farther, we have to understand what bundlers are. So, this from ThoughtCo. The term bundling refers to a form of fundraising in which one person or small groups of people, lobbyists, business owners, special interest groups, or activists seeking legislative action, convince their wealthy friends, coworkers, and other like-minded donors to simultaneously write checks to their preferred candidate for public office. It is not uncommon for bundlers to raise hundreds of millions of dollars in a presidential election year and receive special treatment in return for their work. A bundler is a person or a small group of people who pool or aggregate these contributions and then deliver them in one lump sum to a political campaign. So you can clearly see how bundling would impact the candidate and their policies, and if they win, what they would do once they win. So Buttigieg relies heavily on bundlers, private fundraisers, and ultimately special interest corporate money. Now, this used to be the norm in the past, but this time it's not. Bernie Sanders isn't doing any of this. Bernie Sanders is simply relying on individual contributions, and he has the most by far of anybody in the race. He has over 4 million individual contributions from over 1 million individual contributors. Those are record-breaking numbers. So back in 2016, Bernie broke Obama's record from 2008, and this year he's breaking his own records from 2016. No other candidate even comes close. Bernie hit the 1 million individual contributors mark back in September. No candidate has even hit that number yet. Now, let's go back to Buttigieg here. So I have a couple of videos to show you. This first one is the press asking him about shutting them out of these fundraisers. And before I even react, watch this video and judge for yourself.
Mayor, earlier today you said you were open to having a conversation about opening your fundraisers, and that's a question that reporters have been asking for months now. So I'm wondering, when do you expect to actually have that conversation and give an answer on that?
Again, I don't have a timeline for you.
Well, Mayor, as the candidate, can't you just direct your campaign to open this fundraiser?
What's that?
As the candidate, can't you just direct your campaign to open this fundraiser?
Yes.
And why haven't you done so?
What's that?
Why haven't you done so yet?
There are a lot of considerations, and I'm thinking about it.
Ask questions. Can you give us an example of those considerations?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, Mayor.
Thanks. Thank you.
So what'd you think? I don't know how anybody can watch that video and not clearly tell that Buttigieg is hiding something. Not clearly tell that he's being dishonest. Not clearly tell that there is a reason he is cutting the press out of his fundraising events. I mean, you see him a couple times go, "What's that? What'd you say? What's that?" Really? Like you didn't hear? He was buying time to think of an answer. And then the reporter asked him at the end there, when Buttigieg says he's having, considerations about this, the reporter asked him, "Can you give examples of those considerations?" And he just says no, and then walks off. So let me give you a little window into why Buttigieg is not allowing the press at his fundraisers. Obviously, it's because he is hiding, or he wants to hide, where he's getting his money from. So this report in Sludge is fantastic. I'm going to link to it below this video so you can read the entire thing. But let me give you a little taste here, and it'll give you an idea as to why Buttigieg is shutting the press out. So this is the headline. Here are the lobbyists and corporate execs collecting checks for Pete Buttigieg. As the Buttigieg campaign stops releasing its bundler names and blocks press from fundraising events, here are some of the pharmaceutical and finance executives behind its rise in the big money race, and 3 attorneys whose donations were returned. And this is from David Moore at Sludge. So let me give you some examples here. Steve Elmendorf, partner and co-founder of lobbying firm Subject Matter. So this is one of Buttigieg's bundlers here, or lobbyist supporters. So Elmendorf lobbied for multiple members of the Partnership for America's Healthcare Future, a healthcare industry-funded nonprofit founded to defeat Medicare for All and Medicare public option plans. As of the third quarter of this year, Elmendorf was also registered to lobby for the Federation of American Hospitals, oil company BP America, Wall Street giant Goldman Sachs, Verizon, Facebook, and dozens more corporate clients. So we're just getting started. Again, these are all people that support Pete Buttigieg, have either bundled for him or are lobbying for him, people that are supporting him financially. And when you do this as someone who is raising lots of money for Pete Buttigieg, you expect a return on your investment. That's why these massive corporations, that's why wealthy donors, that's why they give this kind of money to these campaigns, to these candidates, because they expect some kind of return. People don't just give, $1 million for fun. They do it because they want influence on that politician, which again is why Bernie Sanders has completely shut himself off from all of this kind of fundraising. Let me give you more examples here. Hamilton James is the executive vice chairman of Blackstone, the world's largest private equity firm. So Blackstone and other private equity firms are significant investors in the fossil fuel industry. And while large donations from their executives don't technically violate the no fossil fuel money pledge signed by Buttigieg and other presidential candidates, their firms are active drivers of the current boom in U.S. fossil fuel production. A report last year by Friends of the Earth found that Blackstone owns more oil, gas, and thermal coal reserves than any other investor. Here's another example. David Ferris, 21st Century Fox Senior Vice President of Government Relations. As Vice President of Government Relations at 21st Century Fox, Ferris oversees millions of dollars in lobbying expenditures each year aimed at influencing the federal government and states on issues like intellectual property enforcement, taxes, data privacy, and media ownership rules. Another example, Rich Weissman, former Senior Vice President at Bank of America. As a Bank of America executive, Weissman encouraged the use of home equity loans for things like car purchases, a practice that increased mortgage borrowers' risk and made foreclosure more likely for them. In 2013, Weissman joined the board of directors of the Log Cabin Republicans, a Republican organization working to build a stronger, more inclusive Republican Party. So that gives you a little taste of what Pete Buttigieg is all about and why he is shutting the press off from his fundraisers. Now, I have another, so by the way, there's more in that piece. I didn't cover everything. Again, I'll link to that Sludge article below the video under sources. But I'm going to go to the next clip here. So this is a video from Greg Chung. He's a student organizer with Iowa Student Action. And so there's going to be no audio on this because it's actually the High High Hope song is playing in the background. So if I play this video, there's going to be copyright issues. But you'll see the you'll see what he says written below on the screen. So he approaches Buttigieg here. He asks him, "I wanted to ask you, you think taking big money out of politics includes not taking money off of billionaires and closed door fundraisers?" And Buttigieg clearly says no. Let's just watch his response again. There you go. So he's just, I mean, I guess in some ways you have to give the guy credit for just being completely, I wouldn't say, I guess not open, but just transparent in how untransparent he is, I guess is the best way to say it. The way he answers the press here, just saying, no, I'm not going to give you any examples of me considering opening it up, opening my fundraisers up to the press, because obviously he hasn't. Just tells us, this student organizer here, no, I'm not going to acknowledge that taking money from billionaires and private fundraisers is a bad thing. Like, he's just out there with this because look, Buttigieg knows a lot of his support base are typical, are mostly older voters. Again, a lot of older voters support Bernie Sanders and are progressive, but Buttigieg's base are largely older voters that watch MSNBC, CNN, pay attention to mainstream media. They don't usually get this kind of analysis on candidates. So most of his support base isn't going to know who Pete Buttigieg actually is and what he actually represents. They just like him because, I don't know, his personality, or because he could be the first gay president. I mean, like, what if you actually know who Pete Buttigieg is? If you are aware of this, if you read into him, why would you support him? Unless, of course, you're one of his bundlers. Unless, of course, you're one of the wealthy donors that may potentially benefit from a Buttigieg administration. But otherwise, there is no reason to support this man once you actually know who he is representing and what he is about. Let me give you another example here of, or I guess one example here of him being protested at an event. So he's at this event in Iowa, and you see students behind him. They have this banner out, or these banners out. One says 0% support with black voters in South Carolina. Another says climate plan lacking. And then the last one there says, "We need more than Pete." So, look, youth voters, a lot of voters are very aware of who Pete Buttigieg is and do not support him. But right now in Iowa and New Hampshire, the first two voting states, because he is pouring a ton of money into commercials there, you're seeing his support rise in those first two states. So right now he's betting on some of the early states. And if he's able to win one of those states, then that could potentially raise his profile for the rest of the campaign. So that's what he's betting on right now. He's betting on people not being aware of information like this that I'm sharing with you about what he actually represents and who he will actually fight for. And also, look, it's important to look back to 2016. Like, if you actually care about defeating Trump, then understand Hillary Clinton lost not because she didn't appeal enough to Republicans, which she obviously did. It's because people stayed home. She suppressed the base. The base stayed home. Young people weren't energized to go out and knock on doors for her or volunteer for her. Typical non-voters weren't energized because, again, they saw these two horrible choices. And independents that lean to the progressive side weren't energized to come out and vote either. The only way a Democrat wins in 2020 is if you excite people out to vote for you. Because, look, the typical Democratic voters that come out every time are going to come out anyways for the Democratic nominee. So those people will come out regardless. The people you have to appeal to are the people that typically stay home. The young voters, the independents, the typical non-voters. You have to excite them with a message that actually looks in their best interest. That you're delivering something for them, like Medicare for all or free public college. You have to actually offer something to people, because what they've seen over the past 34 years are two parties representing corporate interests. So why would people that are typically non-voters, why would they come out and vote in an election where, once again, you have two candidates who don't represent them? You have to represent the base. You have to excite the base out to vote. And a Pete Buttigieg nominee would not do that. Let alone, Joe Biden wouldn't either. One more thing I want to share here. So this is this is a whole other story I can't get into right now, but Buttigieg and his past work at McKinsey. So Ryan Grimm tweets this out. Appears that Buttigieg at McKinsey helped raise premiums and lay off workers for Blue Cross in Michigan. Michigan, of course, is a must-win state in 2020. If this claim is true, how does he win Michigan? The Trump ads write themselves. So this is a whole other story. I'll link to all my sources below the videos always. So I'll link to this tweet below the video. You can go and look into what Ryan Grimm there retweeted, because that gets into the details of what Pete Buttigieg potentially did in his work at McKinsey. But yeah, this is just another example of how a Trump campaign could easily suppress the vote for Democrats by putting ads out there showing what Pete Buttigieg actually did in his past. Raising premiums for people. Layoffs. And that's even apart from the people behind him that are funding his campaign. This man will completely suppress the vote as much, if not more, than Hillary Clinton did in 2016. So even if you don't care about the policies, even if you don't care that Pete Buttigieg simply represents corporate interests, I assume you do care about defeating Donald Trump in 2020. Pete Buttigieg, with all his history, is not poised to do that because he will not bring out non-voters, he will not bring out independents, and he will not bring out young voters.